Well, the threat of a shutdown did not stop House Republicans from holding their first hearing on the impeachment inquiry of President Biden yesterday. For more than 6 hours, GOP members insisted they have evidence of wrongdoing by the president, only to be contradicted by their own witnesses. Nikole Killion has more from Capitol Hill.
Joe Biden lied to the American people.
House Republicans began their first impeachment inquiry proceeding seeking to tie President Biden to his son Hunter and his family's overseas business dealings.
He lied by telling the American people that there was an absolute wall between his official government duties and his personal life. Let's be clear. There was no wall.
GOP lawmakers pointed to bank records, interview transcripts, and whistleblower testimony as alleged proof of a potential influence peddling scheme.
Hunter Biden cashed in by arranging access to Joe Biden.
The White House has denied any wrongdoing, and minutes into the hearing, the Republicans' own witnesses knocked some of the allegations down.
I do not believe that the current evidence would support articles of impeachment.
I am not here today to even suggest that there was corruption, fraud, or any wrongdoing.
Democrats mocked the hearing as a sham.
If they would continue to say if or Hunter and we were playing a drinking game, I would be drunk by now.
And they called it a distraction from the looming government shutdown with a ticking countdown clock.
We're 62 hours away from shutting down the government of the United States of America, and Republicans are launching an impeachment drive based on a long debunked and discredited lie.
After the hearing, House Oversight Chair James Comer issued 3 subpoenas requesting personal and business bank records for Hunter Biden and the president's brother, James Biden. Anne Marie?
So, Nikole, do we know if anything from the hearing, triggered the committee's requests? I'm just wondering why they're asking for more evidence now.
Well, this is actually something that the chairman intended to do, and when this impeachment inquiry was launched, he suggested that he would subpoena further records. So this is just following up on kind of what he said that he would do, and this really is to kind of look further into various transactions, wire transfers, and other types of financial transactions to see. Obviously, this probe is really around trying to determine whether the president may have used his influence, or his influence was being sold by members of his family and other associates. And in the view of Chairman Comer, he believes that financial records don't lie, and so that they may learn more about whether the president potentially abused his power. That being said, though, to date, they really haven't found anything necessarily linking the president directly to some of these business dealings. And as you heard from even some of the witnesses at the hearing, even they don't think there's enough evidence or see any evidence of wrongdoing.
So is that what some of the reaction that we heard from lawmakers?
Well, you kind of got a taste of it with some of the comments in the piece, right? I mean, Democrats were really just floored and frustrated, and, really were trying to do anything they could to either stop the hearing or slow it down. There were some points and exchanges where, they tried some procedural tactics to try to dismiss the hearing, but obviously it went forward. But from Democrats' view, they view this as a distraction. They don't believe that there is substantial evidence to even have this type of inquiry, but Republicans insist, look, we have been investigating this for several months. People aren't paying attention. And again, all of these treasure trove of documents that the committees, various committees, whether it's oversight, judiciary, ways and means, they feel that it is starting to lead them to more information with respect to their investigation.
And one of the things that the Democrats brought up early on was that this inquiry is moving forward without a full House vote, a full vote on the House floor. And as I understand it, that kind of does limit the scope or the abilities of the committee to investigate. But I don't know, in what way does it limit them? It seems like, they're asking for more bank records. I'm wondering if what are the limitations on their investigative capabilities? Or could they just go on forever?
Yeah, well, right now there don't seem to be any hard and firm limits, and there is some, back and forth over what the committee can and can't do. I mean, look, there was an opinion that was written by the then Trump Justice Department that said an impeachment inquiry isn't valid without a full House vote. But when that was raised in the hearing yesterday, Chairman Comer pointed back to something else, another precedent that he said kind of disputes that. So it's really nothing that is stopping Republicans from moving forward as far as their inquiry. Obviously, one thing that's interesting to note is what really happens to this panel in the event of a shutdown. You know, they want to move forward, but could a shutdown impede that? Right now, it seems that that is not the case. If members of the committee can deem themselves, their staffs rather, as essential, that would allow them to continue their work. And for now, they intend to do so.
And as you know, Hunter Biden is already dealing with his own legal challenges. Could this impeachment inquiry have an impact on his legal issues?
Well, it certainly just adds to the plate, right? I mean, we know that the president's son is facing a number of legal issues stemming from this plea deal that fell through. And of course, he was recently charged. So, you know, there's a lot, obviously, he has to work through. We have not really heard yet from his attorney with respect to this new subpoena request. But certainly his legal team has previously suggested that a lot of this is being politically driven and motivated. So, again, it just kind of keeps this in the forefront of the news, which is probably not necessarily what Hunter Biden wants or the president wants, but, you know, it's kind of where we find ourselves.
Yeah, totally. Nikole, thank you.
You bet.